Today on this video, we're gonna discuss what does it cost, and we're gonna do the whole breakdown on what it costs to build 8 brand new townhouses. We are here today with my partner, Chris Walsh here, and we are at our brand new 8-unit townhouse site. Since we're at the beginning stage, we're gonna talk about design and consultant, we're gonna talk about permitting, and then we're gonna talk about how to fund a project like this. Now, we're gonna have multiple different videos, you guys, on how to build this and the whole breakdown on what it costs to do this, so that if you ever decide to do this, you know exactly how to do this and all the costs that go along with it and the risks that go along with it,
right?
Okay, so let's talk about the first thing, which is design and consultant. Because when we first bought this property, we had to figure out what the hell we're gonna put on this site.
Yep.
So let's talk about that.
Well, you're gonna wanna get your architect involved right up front. The architect's gonna help you to understand the zoning and the codes to be able to tell you what you can and can't do on the property. Right. So here we took it, we brought it to the architect, we got 7,200 square feet, we got a certain amount of FAR.
7,200 square foot a lot.
Yes.
Okay? Lot size, okay?
Lot size.
Yep.
And based on that, here in our code, we get to put a certain amount of floor area ratio per square foot of land. So we were able to do 8 townhouses here, and they're all averaging about 1,400 square feet each.
They're all about 3 bedroom, right? 2 bath, 2.5 bath.
Yep.
Townhouses, okay?
4 stories. We've got parking in the back.
And all of them gonna have rooftop deck looking out toward downtown Seattle. All right, so after we get the architect to figure out how many units we put on here, who are all the other players that actually we need to get involved before we start to actually get the permits?
Yeah, well, there can be lots of different design consultants depending on the project, but the 4 key ones that we want to talk about really are after the architect, you're going to want to bring in your surveyor.
Yep.
The surveyor is going to come and survey the property so you can locate the boundaries, any encroachments. They're going to tell you the topography and where you have slopes and anything like that. Then you're going to want to have a structural engineer on board, because he's going to have to design the structure as soon as the architect has got the design concepts in place. So
what else does the architect do other than help you design a building and tell how many units you put on? Because a lot of people want to know that.
Yeah, so once you figure out that big question of number of units and how big, then you're going to want to sit down with them and talk a little bit more detailed about what kind of product does the area want. Does it want 2 bedrooms to 3 bedrooms? How many bathrooms? You're going to talk about kitchens and bathrooms. What floor do you want the kitchen on versus the bedrooms? Things like that.
And how we want it to position. Like, for example, you guys, these 2 units, right, they're single family, and we wanted to design it so it looked like 2 single family. And then those over there are triplexes, but the way that we design it, we want to make sure that we actually capitalize on a view on the rooftop deck so one of them don't block the other one.
Yeah, that's a key point. Whenever you have a special feature to a property, like a view, make sure you don't miss out. And we got drones nowadays, right? So we see where the view is, and then we implement a design that's going to take advantage of that.
All right, so after the architect does this whole thing, who's next in line?
Well, you're going to bring the surveyor in right up front so he can survey the property. He's going to locate the boundaries, the property corners, but one critical thing he's also going to do is the topography. See, the architect can tell what kind of slopes you have. You can see back here, we've got a cut here of almost 4 feet. So you're going to need to work with that during the design, and if you've got a lot of slopes, it can make a big difference.
And when they have a lot of slope, how does that affect construction? Is it the foundation is deeper? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, your foundation walls are going to get really deep. Sometimes you might even have a basement, and you want to design a basement to help you with the slope. In this case, we don't have any basements, but we do have steps where we elevate each building as we go back, and that helps you with the topography of the site too.
This is why, you guys, it is actually vary on what it costs to build. Someone say that, hey, that's Chris, you know, how come the other guy can build 8 townhouses for cheaper?
Yeah.
Because the land plays a big difference. If you get a flat piece of land that has no slope, it's gonna cost a lot cheaper to build.
Right.
Versus a land that has some slope.
Correct.
Versus a house off a cliff.
Yep.
Explain that.
Yeah. When you get really steep sites, we have a lot of them around here too. This vertical cut here, once it gets over 4 feet, then we got to put shoring in place to hold that bank while we cut it out, and that's very expensive.
All right, so after the architect and the survey, who's next in line to get this thing going so we can get permits?
Yeah, we also want to bring a Geotech on board really early in the project, because we want to understand what kind of dirt we're working with. And when you have topography, especially, we talked about cuts and temporary shoring. To be able to design that, you've got to know what kind of soil you're dealing with. Is it clay? Is it sand? Is it rock? All that kind of stuff weighs into the design of the buildings and the structural walls of the foundation.
So what happened when you have dirt, for example, more clay versus hard rock? Because I know in the past, we did a deal where the dirt was just purely clay.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
What happened when you find it's the wrong type of dirt?
Yeah, when you have the wrong type of dirt, you're going to have to sometimes over-excavate it, which means you're going to have to dig that dirt out, and you're going to have to replace it with good dirt.
Right.
So if you got nice solid rock, or what we have is glacial till around here,
right,
that's very solid, very good for building on,
right,
and you can use what you have.
And the problem is you don't know until you start digging.
Right.
Right? We had a site where we didn't know. It looks good.
Yep.
We go and dig it, come to find out most of the dirt was clay.
Yep.
We ended up had to excavate way more than we need to, and brought way more good dirt back in, and we had an extra $50,000 worth of basically excavating and importing new dirt back in.
Yeah. Yeah, you can bring these soil engineers on board early, you can do your test pits, and then sometimes, like you said, we might not know exactly where that soil is because maybe we didn't do a test in that exact location. So there's still a lot of risk, but you've got to get that soils engineer involved so you can design your buildings appropriately.
All right, so who's next now?
Next, we're going to bring on a structural engineer. We've got an architect involved.
Yep.
He's helping us with the design and the concept of the building and the layout of the rooms and the height and all that kind of stuff. But now we need a structural engineer to tell us how to put that building together to meet code. He's going to tell us things like where to put those anchor bolts and where to put those rebars out of the foundation so that we can have hold downs to hold this building and meet the earthquake requirements of the jurisdiction.
Right. How long does this process take, Chris, from the time we buy the land, we go get an architect, we'll get a survey to draw it, right? And to get all this engineer together, how long does it take before we even see the permits in hand? Because the next thing we want to talk about is permitting, but how long does it take to get from here to permitting?
Yeah, all this design process that we've been talking about here to get a set of plans ready and in for permitting takes us anywhere from 4 to 6 months, depending on whether or not you have another layer of design called design review. And we had that on this particular project. So it took us 4 months in this case to get to the point where we could submit for our building permit.
That's submitting for permit, folks, not getting permit in your hand. All right, let's talk a little bit about, you know, what it costs, because someone's gonna wanna know.
Yeah.
What does it cost to hire an architect to draw, let's say, on average, a 1,400 square foot townhouse? We got 8 of them.
Yeah.
You know, survey,
Yep.
engineer, geotech. What does it cost roughly so they get a rough idea?
Right. Yeah, so to get a survey done on a site similar size to this, it's probably going to run you anywhere from $5,000 to $7,000. There's some variables in that depending on what structures and what things are there and how much work they got to do to get the data.
Yep.
Then you're going to have your geotech. He's going to come out and he's going to do some testing on the site to see what kind of soils you have and write a soils report. And that can run somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000 generally speaking.
Okay.
Then you're going to have your structural engineer who's going to work with your architect, and those guys are going to run you anywhere from, let's say a structural engineer might be about $1,500 to $2,500 per building.
Per building.
And then an architect, you know, on a small site is going to be a little bit more per building than on a bigger site.
Right.
So on a small site, you're probably looking at about $8,000 to $10,000 per building. But when you get to the bigger sites like this, you can get that average down to probably about $6,000 or $7,000 per building.
And that's per building. And we have 8 on here, folks. So do the math, okay? This is the kind of money you got to put out of your pocket after you close the land up front, okay? So this is the kind of money it takes to put this. So far, Chris, what do you think we spent so far before we even get permitting?
Yeah, before we get our permits on this particular site, we put in almost $200,000 just between design and consultants and all the testing and all that stuff. And then in Seattle, we have another big fee called an MHA fee, which costs us another $300,000 on this site. So to get permits, we were in here just over $500,000.
$500,000, folks. This is not including the down payment. We bought this probably for $1 million roughly. We'd have to put down 25%. So that's $250,000 up front, plus another probably $500,000 with all the stuff Chris is talking about. This is cash up front that you got to put out before, right, you got to even break ground. All right, so now we're gonna shift gear. We're gonna talk now about permitting. Earlier we talked about design and consultant. Now we're gonna talk about permitting. We wanna talk about all the permitting that go along with getting permits.
Yep.
How long it takes, how much it costs roughly, okay?
Yep.
So break it down, Chris.
The designers are going to start putting that package together for us for permitting. And the first one, most jurisdictions are going to have some sort of pre-application process.
Yep.
And that pre-application process is very conceptual. You put together a conceptual site plan, you submit it to the the jurisdiction. In Seattle here, they call it a PAR, which is a preliminary assessment report. They give you back a report and comment on your concept, and that helps give you a little bit of feedback on whether or not you're headed down the right path.
So when we found out that we could put 8 townhouses, right, we did a little bit of a simple sketch, and then we shifted it into this PAR, right? And the city came back and said, yes, this concept worked, but we need some small adjustment here and there. We knew that in advance before we started having the architects start drawing everything out more in detail.
Yeah, they can point out some red flags sometimes you might not have really known were here.
Right.
And it's really good to have that feedback going into your full design package,
right,
so you know what you have to deal with. So then the architect and the structural engineer and geos, everybody's going to be working on the design concept and putting together the building set of plans and get them ready for submittal. Most architects are going to be able to handle that process for you. So they will coordinate with all your different consultants and put together that design package. Once that design package is ready to go in, they're going to submit it to the jurisdiction. You're going to pay some fees to get it under review. And then they're going to take probably 3 to 4 weeks on average to review a cycle. And they're going to give you feedback on what your design needs or doesn't need based on building codes.
And then on a project this big, typically how many cycles you think a city and the architect will go back and forth until we get our final permits?
Yeah, on this particular one, 8 townhouses, this one went 4 cycles.
4 cycles.
And that was pretty typical for an 8-unit townhouse site. You get a 2 or a 3 lot deal that's simpler and easier, not so many moving parts, you might get it back in 2 cycles.
Yeah, the bigger the project, the more cycles it's gonna be.
Right.
When we did our apartment building, I think we had, Jesus Christ, I can't even count how many cycles we had, okay? That's why things take so much longer, okay? What's the cost of permitting for each of the townhouses?
Yeah, on average, these are about $7,000 or $8,000 to get a permit.
All right, so by the time we pay for all this stuff earlier, by the time this is ready, we gotta go in and pull the permit. It's gonna be $7,000 to $8,000 per building. So you guys can see now, 8 times 8 is $64,000 with the permitting, just to pull it so you can be ready to start actually putting the shovel in the ground.
Right.
So how long does it take for the whole entire cycle, from the time we start and time we get the permit in our hand?
Yeah. So from the very beginning to the end on this particular one, we had 4 months of a design review process, and then we had 6 months of a building review process. So we had 10 months on this one, which actually was not too bad for an 8-unit. While the building permit is going on, there's other permits that are going to be happening at the same time. But generally speaking, your building permit is the one that's going to take the longest. You'll get a demo permit during that time, and you can also work on other miscellaneous permits with your subs, like the plumbing contractor, electrical contractor, and others.
All right, the last thing we want to talk about is funding. How do you fund what we talked about so far, okay? So we bought the land, you guys, roughly for about $1 million. The bank, okay? They want us 25% down to do a land loan. Now, every month, we gotta actually make the monthly payment on this site also. So 250 grand cash up front. And then now, how do you fund all this soft costs we talked about? And so Chris, why don't you explain that?
So the soft costs, that's money that you can't roll into your land loan.
You can't.
The bank's not going to allow that because it's not permitted. You're just going to be able to fund the money on the purchase. So these soft costs have got to come out of pocket. You're going to have to come up with this with cash.
Yeah.
And if you don't have it yourself, you might need to bring in some partners or investors of some
raise
sort.
capital or something.
But you've got to get cash to be able to pay for these.
And this is what I want you guys to hear. A lot of people don't realize this. When they say, oh yeah, I'll do flips, they can roll a lot of stuff in. But when you do new construction, you can't. This is why there's so much more money it takes to do new construction compared to actually flipping houses, okay? So let's break it down for them.
Yeah, so on this one, for example, we're talking about our 8-unit townhouse site here. We've got a budget here of paying for taxes, insurance, miscellaneous costs along the way during this approximately 1-year time frame of design and permitting of about $25,000. Then we've got our design and our consultants that we have to pay. That we've got about $120,000 in budget. And then our building permits for review and issuance of those permits, we've got $95,000.
Wow.
And then we have that one-time large fee for MHA. In our case, is $317,000 on this site. So we got a total of $557,000 that we got to come up with out of pocket to get to a permit.
$557,000 cash up front on top of the $250,000. Damn! Not everybody might not have the HMA. Let's explain that to them.
Right.
Because they might not have to come up with that.
Yeah. So this in Seattle is a mandatory housing affordability fee. It's to help with affordable housing in Seattle. So they collect a fee from us developers.
All the developer, from single family, new construction to apartment building, okay?
Yeah. So they'll take our $317,000, they'll put it into the fund for the affordable housing, and then they'll fund those types of projects in and around Seattle to help with affordable housing.
Now, if you do new construction in your city, you might not have that. But in Seattle, we got to deal with that. So you can see that's 300-some thousand out of the 575. That's a big amount of money up front. This is why there's pros and cons in every city. But this is the cash that Chris and I got to put up, you guys, on top of the down payment of $250,000. But this is not including new construction. Let's talk about that, and then we're going to tell them about the next video.
Yeah. So once you've got your permit in hand and you've put that money in, now you can take that permit to your bank and you can start talking about construction financing. And when you get your construction financing, you get a little bit of relief because you can fund and pay yourself back for a lot of those upfront soft costs that we just talked about.
And it all depends on how much equity you have in these projects.
Right.
The more equity you have, the better chance you're gonna get a lot of the soft money back in your pocket.
Right.
After you go talk to the bank construction, then the next thing you're gonna need is, how do you find the general contractor?
Yeah.
Okay? So, we're gonna end this video right now, because on the next video, we're gonna talk more about how to find the general contractor.
Right.
We're gonna talk about how to actually get construction loan, how to fund that, and a few other items, okay? But for now, you guys, you got a little glimpse on basically what it takes to basically break ground on what it costs to design, to get a permit, how do you actually pay for some of these soft costs before we even get to even the hard cost stuff yet.
Yep.
All right, even finding anybody else, okay? So, if y'all like this video, make sure you guys give us a thumbs up. If you have any questions for Chris and I about what we saw today, we talked about today, about soft costs, please put in the comment. And then you guys don't forget, okay? We appreciate all you guys subscribing to the channel. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, right? We want to hit 1 million subscribers here in 2024. And again, you guys have other video ideas and topics you want us to talk about in new construction, we're happy to make it for you guys, all right? But until then, we'll see them next video.
Next video, guys.
Peace.